When I speak with agents, they get so caught up in like what to say. But let's say I teach you what to say and you don't understand fundamentally what's actually causing this problem, you're going to continue to perpetuate it and continue to create it over and over and over again. I think it's a function of yes, knowing how to handle that, but it's also how to curate the environment in pre-qual and with asking questions that makes it conducive for somebody saying yes when I meet with them. I should know if I do this properly, if they need to speak to somebody prior to authorizing agreements, because I should be diligent in the questions that I ask in pre-qual around that. And you find yourself in situations where that happens frequently, it's because you're not intentionally and purposefully curating that environment by pre-qualifying and making sure that all decision makers are going to be there. And if not, who needs to be consulted? And is it possible to get them on a call via Zoom or via telephone when we are meeting in person, so that way all hands are on deck and all decision makers are there, and that increases the probability that they can make a decision and go ahead and authorize paperwork.
It's so interesting, Aaron. I went on an appointment this Monday. What came up to the surface is that the other agent did not qualify the seller. So what he didn't realize is that the seller owed more than what the property is worth. So he went in there like with a traditional listing. Oh, we can list it at this. The commission will be this. Thinking like, hey, the seller has a little bit of equity. What I realized is that he had no equity. And the only option was a short sale basically for that client. So I went in there and the guy flat out told me, he's like, to be quite honest, I think the other guy has a better, like I just connected with him better than I did with you.
Yeah.
But he didn't present me with the right plan basically. So qualifying the lead is so important. And that could be the reason you get a listing or you don't get a listing.
So I need you to understand like fundamentally what the actual problem is so we can rectify it. That'll come up less, but then when it does come up less, you know what to say to handle it.
Let's practice it from a pre-qualification standpoint. We're going to practice it where it comes up as a surprise.
Where that would happen is in those 5% of chance, like where I'm asking all the right questions, but they just didn't share with me that there is someone. And I probably asked them directly and they were like, no, like it's fine. But then you get in front of them like, oh, I got to talk to my son. And you're like, well, I asked you that and you told me you didn't have to talk to him, right? And then how to, on the fly there, like what to do to try to see if you can, get them on the phone or something like that. Okay.
I struggled with that as well too. Like asking like, hey, look, will all the decision makers be there? So instead I now ask it like, hey, I see that it's you and Tiffany on title. Will both of you be present during our meeting together? And then after that, you could say, great, aside from you and Tiffany, are there any other decision makers or is there anybody else that you would like for there to be present that would help you in deciding what is best for you and your family?
I would say something like, I've only spoken to you. Is there any other decision makers or anybody else on title, which is what you said, right? And then it's like, okay. And then let's say they try to give me the, oh no, it's fine. I make all the decisions. Almost invariably for men is who you'll get that from. Oh no, it's fine. Like I make all the decisions. Like, my wife just goes with what and just so you know, never has somebody said that to me. And that's actually been the case. Never. They never say like, what invariably comes right after that, because you believe them. And then you go on the appointment like, I got to talk to my wife. So let's say
I'll be transparent. That's what happened to me on Monday. When he's like, oh, no, I make all the decisions, then I'll bring my wife involved. And then I'm like it got to the closing table. We handled the whole praying thing. And then it was like my wife. And then I'm like, okay, what time is your wife home? She's like 5. It was already 4. I said, you know what? If it's okay with you, I've got a couple phone calls to make. I can come back at 5 o'clock,
Oh yeah, my boy's closing, bro. I love it. And he was like, okay.
He was okay, yeah. Like
it's so good. It's so good. You're like, nah, bro, we're doing this. And then if I get that pushback on the phone, it's like, listen, I really respect and I appreciate that, as far as, how you guys delineate, decision-making in the house. I do find that it's actually the most helpful for families if we do have an opportunity to connect when all parties are present. So that way I can answer any questions everybody has versus kind of playing a game of telephone and having to like transfer that information. So I'm looking here at my schedule. If we were to connect, me, you, and your wife, under normal conditions, would you guys be available in the evenings or the afternoons? So by pushing back a little bit, let's say he was like, well, yeah, she's usually home around 5. You could have, instead of like having to wait, what I'm saying? Like it's just another layer of efficiency where, when you got there, she was there so you could present and then instead of having to wait and make a few phone calls. Even if somebody's the only one on title and they're married, that if the husband is the head of the house, the woman's the neck. So the head can't do anything that the neck won't allow.
That's actually a really good way of even on the phone, be like, well, no, look, I make a lot of the decisions. And be like, hey, do I have your permission to be completely transparent? Oftentimes when in these situations, what I've realized is that the husband is the head and the woman is the neck.
Or maybe like this. So to make it even more softer, like, I don't know if this is true for you, but I know in my house, I've been married for almost 20 years now. And my wife, Carla, like, if I'm the head of the household, she's the neck. And this is so good because we can like triangulate, right?
Yeah.
So like, yes, it seems like it's a little confrontational. When I say, I don't know about you, but in my experience, in my house, it makes it much more palatable. Like,
100%. You're basically saying the same thing. It's just
saying the same thing. I'm just putting it on me, not on you. Let's say it's an investment property. If I see it's held in an LLC or something like that, I'd be like, hey, Jose, obviously you're one of the owners. If you don't mind me asking, my intention asking is that he knows you just to see if I could give you any more information. It could be helpful or useful in some way. Are you like a managing partner in this property? Do you have other partners? And if so, how do you guys collectively make decisions around, the selection process of vendors, whether they be agents or other people to like, service the real estate, and then be quiet? Because I've also had situations where investors will be like, no, like I'm the guy. And then as soon as you get there, what do they say? No, I got to talk to my partners. Again, I want to curate an environment that's conducive for someone to be receptive to my requests when I see them. The request that I'm going to make is to hire me and to sign a contract. In order to do that, I need to ensure that all decision makers and anybody involved in the sale is either present in the physical form, or we can get them on the phone or do a FaceTime while I'm there with them. So let's say somebody says to me, they're like, oh, well, Jose, my sister, but like, she lives in Georgia. Like, okay. And I'm wondering because, I do find it in these situations that transparency is really, the best policy sort of thing. We don't want people feeling left out in any way. And I'm not suggesting that you're trying to not be transparent. At the same time, I find it to be the most effective and efficient for families when they're making these decisions to have all parties like present. So that way it saves you time. So you don't have to play this game of telephone trying to relay information. And plus I can answer any questions they may have while I'm there. So if we were to connect, me, you in person, and perhaps her via Zoom, under normal conditions, would you be available like in the evenings or afternoons to do that? Or I might then try to go to a Zoom appointment so I can have all parties involved, because that's how important having everybody present is. And when did how many appointments did you go on before you realized like, oh?
I make exceptions for certain scenarios. What I mean by that is like, let's say it's a divorce and there's a restraining order.
Okay, yeah, there's an exception, yeah.
I'm not going to be like, hey, look, like I need your other spouse there. So there are exceptions to the rule.
But they are exceptions.
The rule of thumb is, hey, look, let's have all parties there, if possible, on a speakerphone or that. Culturally, in some Latino cultures, I've had situations where no matter what I say, they're not meeting with both of us. I'm meeting with one of them, and it has to be a two-step process, basically. Meaning I meet with one, and then the second meeting, I'm meeting with both of them. Or I've had situations where it's almost like somebody's taking the lead on it, and it's like, look, I interview you first. If I like what you have to offer, then I present you to the other person. And I'm basically interviewing 4 people. My wife's not meeting any of them until I bring the person that I believe is the best candidate, basically. I got away from asking if all decision makers were going to be there for a while. So like when I say I deviated completely, I got away from sending pre-listing packages. I got away from asking if decision makers. And I think I felt a little bit awkward with the, hey, will all decision makers be there? Almost like I felt a little bit awkward asking that. So I felt for me like, hey, look, I see such and such person is on title. Will both of you be present? Was a way that I felt more comfortable asking that questions versus, hey, will all the decision makers be there? For some reason, I felt uncomfortable with that.
There's a part of you that like, there's like this amiable side of you, like where like uncomfortable, and you don't want to create like, you've turned yourself into the type of person that can create tension. But at the same time, sometimes when you're communicating, like if it feels uncomfortable for you, it creates tension for you.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm a closer, meaning I close for the signature. I don't want it to feel like there's a salesperson on the other side. I want it to feel like, hey, look, like that was just the natural progression of the presentation, where the next step is for us to take care of the appropriate paperwork. I also think, so this is the part that I had gone away, like my presentation was rock solid, but the closing part needed some help with it again. And then after I started practicing now for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, it's back in line.
Just that you had, like, again, deviated, you weren't being as intentional. Again, what's interesting from a coaching perspective is if we back up, portions of your pre-qual got lax, like you weren't asking a question around the partners, you weren't sending the pre-listing back, like you started to drift a little bit. But what's interesting is because you're so attuned to the results and you're having so many reps, you were able to catch it really quickly, right? So you had like 3 or 4 that like didn't work out and you're like, that's not, that shouldn't be happening. But then upon reflection and conversation and triangulating, you're like, oh, this is the reason why. But then you were able to surgically deal with it. Because I think it's very easy for an agent, Jose, to, like, let's say, drift away from their process and pre-qual and the process and the pre-list. And maybe they're getting away from asking closing questions. But if they're not going on enough appointments all the time, they might not catch it for like
months.
Yeah, months, bro. Like I'm talking like 6 to 8 months. They might not even notice what's going on. And then they'll start to say things like, oh, it's the market and blah, blah, blah. It's like, nah, dude, you're getting the reps. You're just not converting. And the reason you're not converting is because your process is softened up or gotten weak, or you're skipping steps or you're not closing.
So let's say now it's a surprise and they just bring it up. They did it. They said, hey, look, yeah, all decision makers would be there, or it's just me on the title. There's nobody else. And then they bring it up at the presentation and they're like, well, look, I actually have a friend who I run financial decisions by. I like to talk to them before taking care of any paperwork.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, and I have to imagine, because, I want you to be making this decision that you feel is best, right? And whatever you decide, I'll support you 100%. So before I go, I just have a couple questions for you. And the intention in those questions is so you can get clarity and you can decide what you feel is best. And whatever you decide is okay. Fair enough?
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah, so I have to imagine, particularly being that your friend's not here, they're going to be weighing heavily on your guidance because you actually are the one that met with me. Would you agree with that?
That's true.
Okay, so based on our kind of time spent together, based on the information that we sent over, based on the track record and reviews, I mean, you strike me to be straightforward. I'm the same way. Do you feel comfortable and confident with me that I can help you sell this home and I would look out for your best interest?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's not even a question.
Okay, so it sounds like the recommendation that you would have to your friend would be like, hey, I want to proceed with Aaron and go ahead and put it on the market.
Yeah. That's the recommendation. But then again, I do run things by her just to kind of make sure that everything is good.
Yeah, perfect. And in an attempt to ensure that you have all the information that you need to make the best decision possible, how about we do this, if you're open to it? We can just go ahead and get her on the phone. I can give her a call or we FaceTime. I can answer any questions she may have. So that way, you can save time. I can save time. I'm sure you don't want to get back together and take another 30, 45 minutes to take paperwork. And, if it makes sense, we can take the next steps. How does that sound?
Yeah, I mean, I would be okay with that.
Okay. And then just get them on the phone. You just did that recently, didn't you?
Well, I did. The one I feel comfortable saying is just, hey, yeah, obviously talking to your friend sounds like it's very important. And obviously I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident with this decision. What I often find happens when somebody goes off and talks to a friend is that a friend comes up with additional questions. They ask something else and you may or may not know the answers. And what often happens is I receive a phone call, either jumping on a 3-way call or with the additional questions that the friend wants to know. In order to make this an efficient and effective process, since I'm already here, you're here, would you be open to just getting your friend on the line right now to see if maybe I could answer some of the questions that they may have?
Yeah, I love that. Demand is driven primarily through the cost of money. And if the cost of money keeps going up, demand will continue to shrink.
We're having much more challenging conversations with our clients.
The truth is that, we're at 30-year lows in transaction volume. So that's why we have to be very intentional about swimming where there are actually people that are motivated and qualified and learning the skills that we need to be able to convert the opportunities that are available to us.
Since the rates started going up, our market has been so volatile. 6 months is hot, 6 months is cool.
What is the price of gas right now in California?
Like 6 or 7.
What we don't recognize is that has second and third level consequences within the economic machine. And it takes months to work that into the system. There'll be inflation. Everything will just cost more. I don't see anybody really talking about this.